When you scroll through a sea of welding and plasma cutting machines online, it's easy to get that creeping feeling that every product looks slick on the photo, but once you fire it up on a real project it just doesn't cut it literally. I've been there, staring at a listing with glossy angles, promising industrial-grade precision, only to end up with a tool that either never reaches the temperature you need or stalls halfway through a thin sheet of steel. That hesitation is why I'm doing this deep dive on the TechJ's mini welder and plasma cutting machine, Model Cut 120. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about who actually needs a machine like this. The Cut 120 is marketed as an industrial-grade tool, but it's really a compact, 120-amp unit that fits on a bench or a small workbench in a garage. If you're a hobbyist who likes to repair car body panels, make custom metal art, or do occasional DIY projects that involve cutting thin sheet metal or stainless steel, this could be a solid addition to your kit. On the flip side, if you're a full-time fabricator who needs to cut inch or thicker material on a daily basis, you'll likely run into limits with the power and duty cycle of this mini machine. One of the first practical strengths I noticed is the adjustable plasma torch. The controls are straightforward: a dial for amperage, a switch for start/stop, and a small jog knob that lets you fine-tune the arc length. In my tests, moving the needle from 50 amps up to 120 amps made a noticeable difference when cutting 1 mm stainless steel versus 3 mm mild steel. The arc stayed stable and didn't flicker, which is a common complaint on cheaper units. That stability translates into cleaner cuts, especially when you're working on tight tolerances for a homebrew project like a custom bracket or a decorative metal sign. Because the machine is built around a pure copper welding transformer, heat dissipation is actually decent for a device its size. The unit didn't overheat during a 30-minute continuous run on a small batch of 2 mm aluminum sheet. That's something you'll appreciate if you're planning to do small-scale production runs, say 10 or 15 parts in one session without having to shut the machine down every few minutes to let it cool. However, the duty cycle isn't truly industrial. The spec sheet suggests about a 60% duty cycle at full power, which means after roughly 6 minutes of cutting at 120 amps you'll need to give it a short break. If you try to push through a larger job, you'll start to notice a drop in cutting speed and the torch may sputter. Another strength is the portable nature of the Cut 120. The whole unit weighs just under 25 pounds and comes with a built-in handle, so you can haul it from a garage to a job site or even store it in a small workshop corner. The power cable is long enough, about 8 feet, to let you position the machine comfortably without constantly moving the outlet. I found that very useful when I set up a makeshift workbench in my driveway, plugged the unit into a standard 240V outlet, and were able to cut a section of galvanized steel pipe without having to rearrange tools. Now for the practical weaknesses that matter once the box is opened. First, the shielding gas supply. This model doesn't come with an integrated gas tank. You have to attach your own oxygen or argon cylinder, depending on the material you're cutting. For a casual user, purchasing a proper cylinder and regulator adds a hidden cost that many listings don't make obvious. I ended up buying a small 2-liter argon tank for about $70 just to get the machine working on stainless steel without a lot of oxidation. If you were hoping to plug in and start cutting right out of the box, you'll need to factor in that extra expense and the space for the tank. Second, the precision of the cut is only as good as the ground clamp you use. The unit includes a basic clamp that works fine on thin sheet metal, but when you try to secure a thicker piece, say a 3 mm steel plate, the clamp can wobble a little, leading to a jagged edge. I had to improvise a heavier, steel-to-steel clamp from an old welding jig to keep the workpiece perfectly still. That extra step isn't mentioned in the marketing copy, and it can be a stumbling block for beginners who rely entirely on the supplied accessories. Another point that often trips up new users is the air compression requirement. The plasma cutter needs a steady stream of compressed air to blow away the molten metal and keep the cut clean. The Cut 120 can work with a standard 3 HP shop air compressor, but if you only have a small, portable compressor, you'll see a decline in cutting speed and edge quality. I tested it with a 1.5 HP compressor and the arc started to sound choppy, which translated to a slower, more uneven cut. That means the plug-and-play vibe is really a plug-and-bring compressor.